Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Now, as we have reported over the last several weeks, we have discussed and we have talked about the increasing tempo of Russian arms procurement. We have seen the Russians invest heavily into new weapon systems and, more importantly, the production capacity of various weapon systems. Now, after months and months of fighting and in the early stages of the war, from the very beginning of the war, the Ukrainians had an edge on the Russians with the use of drones. Obviously, the Ukrainians started out with the Turkish TB2 drone, launching the Mamel missile system that initially was very effective in the early stages of the war. However, the Russians, through the use of electronic warfare, have made it very difficult for the TB2 drone to now operate over Ukraine. Now, we saw the emergence of the Lancet 1, the Lancet 2, the Lancet 3 variant, and now we are seeing new systems beyond the Lancet drone systems. And this new system that we're seeing now is the Product 53, Variant 53 Kamikaze drone. So what makes this system, this Variant 53, more deadly than the earlier variants of the Lancet? Well, one of the key features to this attack system, and it is a kamikaze attack drone. It loiters the battlefield. It does have the capacity to have man-in-loop, meaning a Russian service member has the ability to guide this system over and then engage in a target. But it also has a full autonomous capability, meaning this system, this drone, now has the ability to fly over the battlefield on its own. In its hardware is stored images of various Ukrainian vehicles: Leopard 2s, Leopard 1s, M1A2 Abrams, Bradleys, high-end Ukrainian vehicles, and specifically artillery systems as well. This vehicle, this drone, has the ability to identify on its own Ukrainian armored vehicles and then engage those systems without a man in the loop. We anticipate that as the war continues, these weapon systems, these Product 53, Variant 53s, will overtake the earlier versions of the Lancet 1s, 2s, and 3s that were being used by the Russians. These have been used this month, and we anticipate that Russian production will increase. At the same time, we are seeing updates to the older Lancet variants of kamikaze attack drones also being upgraded with some of this fully autonomous engagement capability. So it'll be very interesting to see as this war continues what new systems the Russians are going to deploy. Obviously, there is a next generation beyond what we're seeing here in terms of this Variant 53. And then the numbers that the Russians are going to produce. Well, look, we're seeing the Russian defense budget right now exceed $100 billion. In the early stages of the war, it was around $60 billion. So obviously the Russians are vastly increasing their defense spending. And with vast amounts of defense spending comes new weapon systems. And that's what we're seeing. And remember, one of the key factors in this war, the Russians get more for their dollar than you see in the West. So if the Russians spend $1 billion, they usually are able to get more bang for their buck. Their costs in terms of paying salaries and benefits to service members are not as high as you would see in Western nation states. So we will continue to watch what is happening in terms of the production and deployment of new Russian weapon systems. This is just one of many new weapon systems that the Russians are starting to field. We are seeing new generations of longer range missile systems as well that have fire and forget capability, precision guided weapon systems that the Russians are deploying. But again, more and more of these more economical, fully autonomous drone systems that are proving to become very, very effective. Now, in the ongoing conflict, we continue to see the Russians continuing its pressure campaign against Avdiivka. Again, to the north, to the south, and now to the rear of Avdiivka, to the southwest, that encirclement continues. Again, as I've talked about in previous episodes, the situation in Avdiivka is precarious. Not only that, we are seeing large-scale buildup of Russian forces north of Avdiivka, running all the way to the north towards Kupiansk. We believe at this point, running from Kupiansk to Avdiivka are in excess of 200,000 Russian soldiers. Well over 1,000 main battle tanks that are operating in this sector from Avdiivka all the way north. Just in Avdiivka are approximately 35 to 50,000 Russian troops trying to encircle Avdiivka. Again, very tough moment for the Ukrainians, very reminiscent of what happened in Bakhmut. Very reminiscent. And I have a hunch that the Russians believe that the Ukrainians expended large amounts of equipment, materiel, and manpower in the failed Zaporizhzhia offensive. Some of those units have actually been now withdrawn from the Zaporizhzhia sector and are trying to hold the line against these new Russian offensives that are taking place elsewhere. Additionally, we are hearing reports that the Russians could be preparing for even a larger winter offensive. So we're going to watch that very closely as the Russians are in that possible preparatory phase of even larger offensive operations. Again, the Russian military is expanding. It is getting bigger month by month by month. Anywhere from 20 to 35,000 new troops each month are being inducted into the Russian military. We anticipate that the Russian ground forces in the not-too-distant future are going to exceed 1.2 million ground forces alone as this buildup continues. So that's where we are at for today. We will continue to monitor and report and bring you more content for your consumption. Thank you for joining us. More to come. And as always, have a good day.